So, some people look at the layers of the cloud as building up on top of each other. You know, where we've got our infrastructure, we've got our platform, we've got our software, and they build up. I like to think that they're nested within each other. So I will show you in this section how the systems are nested inside each other, the different layers of the cloud. And we'll show how containerization is actually blurring the distinction between some of these traditional layers. And we'll show how containers then can fit into a continuous delivery system. So if we're outside of our cloud and somebody's using a web browser to type in a URL or a route, they're then going to hit our infrastructure level. So I like to think of the infrastructure not as the bottom level, but as the outer level. And that's going to enable us to get through the routing and the firewall and the load balancing into our operating systems, which are then going to manipulate things like memory and CPUs and hard drives. And the tools for this, since we went through the different types, 10 different types of systems, the tools at the infrastructure level are going to create, they're going to configure, and they're going to orchestrate the containers. So then nested inside the infrastructure, if we think about this as the request coming from the outside, you've got the platform level. And at the platform level, lots of things are done, but here we're focusing a little bit more on containers, where you've got container management, and you've got an image registry, which is a place that all of the images are going to be stored, and then the containers are instantiated from the images. And then nested within the platform level, you've got the software level. And the tools at this level are things like your code repository, your Git repository, your build automation tools I showed you in the last slide. So all of this needs to be integrated into our business processes, and the pipeline tool is going to enable our enterprise workflows to manipulate all these different types of tools in a process that results in something that's going to bring about a continuous delivery of the things that we've continuously planned based on the knowledge that we develop and evolve in our knowledge management system. But containerization is going to blur some of these distinctions. And what containers actually are, they're a traveling environment, essentially, that is a way to have a reduction in the amount of testing you have to do because you're pushing the environment around, so you don't have to be afraid of things like configurations or dependencies changing in different situations. So what we do is we start with a Docker image, and we build that Docker image, which is portable, and we have that Docker image travel through our pipelines. So at some point we built this, maybe at the end of our testing phase, and it goes into the registry. It's going to travel through our staging and our production as something that was pre-built. Then there's a Docker service, which is a collection of containers. So essentially, we've taken this image and instantiated it 3 times, and now we've got 3 instances that are together acting as a unified group that are a Docker service. Then there's a Docker stack, and what a Docker stack does is it takes some number of services, whether it's 1 or 20, and groups them together into a functioning higher unit. And then we've got a Docker registry, which is a database of images, and each registry has repositories in it. And again, working from this perspective, we're able to remain agnostic with respect to cloud. And if we grow, that means we can go to our cloud provider and say, we'll just move to a different provider if you don't lower the rates, is one approach. And then there are things like simply being able to have fault tolerance and disaster recovery be things that are not dependent on the reliability of a particular cloud provider. So now that we know this, if we're going to implement continuous delivery, we're going to need to include delivery of these images. We're going to need to include delivery of containers, which again are the images are instantiated as containers at some point in our process. Delivery of these services, which are groups of cloned containers, and delivery of stacks. So then, if we're delivering images, the first bullet up there, our second elaborates on that a little bit. We need to build up the images from 3 different elements. And in Docker, It's very simple. We got the code from our app, we've got a Docker file, and we've got a requirements file which lists all the things that need to be downloaded and installed in order to create this portable environment. So the Docker file defines the environment, and the requirements I just told you, it tells you what to download. And the app code is something that can be very, very complex because it's our app. But it can be discretized into this element. We can talk about it as the app code here. So we've built, in delivering the images, we build them and then we deliver them to the registry. Now, here we've got our container delivery, our service delivery, and our stack delivery here. We do that with a container orchestration tool. For example, Kubernetes is a good example of that, and another example of that is Docker Swarm. And in Docker Swarm, it's just a simple YAML file. It's docker-compose.yaml, and it defines a collection of services that comprise the stack. So here's our docker-compose.yaml, and it's going to define this stack, which instantiates these images into containers built up into a number of services which are together this stack.